Welcome to the Channelers of Change webcast. I'm Linda Benyo. On behalf of our esteemed channelers and all of you, I welcome you from all over the world to the Crimson Circle Connection Center here in Louisville, Colorado, USA. Also, I'd like to welcome our live audience here also in support and anxious to hear what it is these channelers have to share with us. Today, you'll have the opportunity to hear from Steve Rother with espavo.org, from Jim Self, masteringalchemy.com, and Jeffrey Hoppe, crimsoncircle.com. They'll talk about the future of our beloved planet based on the information that they receive from their entities. We really look forward to this. Our first session will last approximately 1 hour with questions from the podium, and then we'll take approximately a 30-minute break and come back for live audience questions. So let's get started. Gentlemen and channelers, would you please take a few minutes to tell us about the entities and how you got into this work that you channel, and about your organization. Let's begin with Steve Rother.
I was a very comfortable contractor in San Diego, California for many years. Thought I knew what I was going to be when I grew up. Raising a family, having a business of my own that I was very proud of. Enjoyed my work. And one day, I got a message. And it just tapped me on the shoulder. It was amazing. I had also found some people that had very similar experiences through some of the Cryon work, actually, had found a AOL chat room above all things. And I had this great idea one time, back in 1995, and basically the idea was, why don't we have an online meditation? Let's have an online meditation, and everybody can take turns doing it. There was only about 10, 12 people in this chat room that came in and participated on a regular basis. Many more followed very shortly after that. But the leader of the chat room came back immediately and said, "Good idea, Steve. Let us know when you have it ready." And I was thinking, well, maybe you guys could do it. And I just came up with the idea. I'm a contractor. I wasn't going to do that. And that actually started me channeling the group. And the person that came back and did that was Jeffrey Hoppe. He was the guy who started that whole chat room experience and made a safe space for us to discover ourselves. And Jeff and I bonded right away. We became very good friends. We've known each other and been very similar work, even though we don't always read each other's work. That's the interesting thing. Most of even what this came from today came from the fact that people would come up to me during some of my seminars and tell me things that Adamus channeled recently through Jeff and so forth. And when we do get together and talk, we generally get together and talk about, hey, a funny thing happened on the way to the channel the other day. We don't necessarily say, Adamus said this, the group said this. So it's really interesting that we've all gone through some drastic changes, some really big movements lately. And that's what caused this here today. So several years later, I started actually putting out these messages, and I started getting to this point where I would start making up these messages, because that's what it felt like. I was making them up. And pretty soon the tears would come down, and I'd have to learn how to type through the tears and put them out and so forth. And people would come to me and say, "Who are you channeling?" And I go, "Well, I'm not channeling." And then finally, after a while, I owned that I was actually channeling and that this is how it actually happens. And people would say, "Well, who do you channel?" Because that was becoming very important back in those days. We wanted to know what level of dimension you were from and what the names they were channeling and all the other stuff. And the entities that I was channeling were not interested in that at all. They completely went the other way. And I said, I really don't know. I can tell you that it's not a single entity. It's a group of entities. And somebody else came back later and said, "Well, what does your group say about this?" And from that point on, we started calling them the group. I can tell you that they told me there were 9 in the group, 8 of them and 1 of me. And that I was part of this group that I knew nothing about before. learning how to channel and trust that and work with that has been a life experience for me. And of course, I don't do contracting anymore. For the last 20 years, I've been a professional channel, traveling the world and doing seminars and doing the work that we've done. We did it under the Lightworker banner for many, many years and have recently changed to Espavo. Espavo is one of the words that the group came up with, and they were telling a story about Lemuria and the ancient days of Lemuria. And this was a greeting that they used to use for hello and goodbye, kind of like ciao or aloha, some of the other fun entities like that. And literally translated, it means thank you for taking your power. So we work under the Espavo banner. We're at espavo.org. I've put out 6 books since that time. I don't do much with the books anymore. It's kind of interesting. The book industry is I've kind of stepped away from that and gone much more into technology. We do almost all of our work online, although we do still do some traveling and work with that, but we've been blessed. Our work has been accepted almost everywhere. We've presented at the United Nations 5 different times on 2 different continents. So it's been just a real blessing for us to know that this has been accepted and welcomed in the way that it has, and it's taken some very interesting turns, which we will talk about here today.
Okay. So with that, Jim Self, would you please share with us how you got involved in this and about the nature of what you're doing some things?
Yeah, I do this a little differently than Steve and Jeff do it. And it started, oh, so you're not hearing me somewhere. Can you hear me now?
Is it on?
How is that? Is that any better for you?
Better.
Oh,
Much better.
okay, good.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've known all my life is that something's different about me. Not different, well, maybe different. Some people say different, but not different from the standpoint of walking around, experiencing myself. I've had lots of opportunities in business and politics and kind of going through a life path. But real early on, I realized that I did something that the person next to me didn't do, or at least they didn't pay attention to it, or they didn't know what it was if they did it. And I can remember about 8 years old, 9 years old, that we were playing baseball. And the guy who was up next at bat was the best baseball player on our team, and we were losing the game, and he had to get up to play. But he fell down in the outfield, and his arm kind of did this. And so that wasn't going to work real well playing with. And I remember I went up to him, and I said, well, let's just fix this. And we fixed it. His arm wasn't broken. Now, nobody would call that broken arm at the time. You know, those things don't happen. But it was vividly clear this arm was broken, and now the arm isn't broken. And it was one of those things that just sticks in the back of your mind, and you go on. And then all through the beginning of junior high school, people would come up and say, can you fix this? And it was just the way it was until you went to high school, and then everybody forgot about that because they were doing other things. And so, but that began to take many different twists. I would see things, I would know things, I would experience things. Couldn't make sense out of any of those things. And then at 24 years old, I was elected to the San Jose, California City Council. And that was all interesting, fun stuff. But at about 30, I was vice mayor of San Jose. And that was interesting because the mayor at that time was loving traveling all over the world, so I got to run meetings. And what I realized is I knew what the person that was standing up there wanted before they ever even opened their mouth. And so it began to be something like, well, here, thank you for let me understand, is this what you mean? Is this what you want? And they'd go, uh-huh. You know, they got 800 posters, they spent $20,000, they're making their presentation. Is anybody upset with, can we do this? People go, okay. And these meetings would take about 30, 40 minutes instead of 4 hours. It was really cool. But it was really aware that this aspect called clairvoyance was kicking in. And then the simple version from that point on, I went to a place called the Berkeley Psychic Institute. It's the first time I've ever said that out loud, actually, for a long time. And sat down to figure out what is all this skill set of And these people were reading me, and what they were going to say, I knew what they were going to say before they'd say it. So I think I want to go play here. And so played there for about 14 years, teaching all the levels of this. And then Roxanne and I set up the Avalon Institute, or went on to play in Avalon Institute, and then went on to the point where really all this starts, where I began to be aware of having all along these conversations in my head, and conversations with many in my head. And it got to the point where it was really clear it was just an ongoing conversation. It was just how things worked. And at one point, the entity that is known as Metatron came in and said, there's a pathway that we would like to create with you that has never, ever been walked before. Never. And it's a pathway that will allow you your own ascension, evolution. It will raise the earth back to a fully Christed 12th dimensional level of consciousness. And it will hold the door open for all of humanity to walk through into a 5th dimensional consciousness. Would you like to play? It's like, well, let me get back to you. You know, I'll think about it. So what do you say to Metatron? But okay, let's do this. And so mastering alchemy is come from that standpoint. And the entire pathway was tools. We're going to teach you tools. Here's what an application is. Here's how you define yourself. Here's how you step out of the 3rd dimension. Here's how you begin to open up the eye of Horus, which is in the brain. Here's how you begin to, and that's how it's all unfolded. And to the point where pretty much right here, there is a huge evolutionary opportunity that we're kind of going to play with. And so we'll talk about that from here.
Okay, Jeff Hoppy, how about telling us how you got into all this?
My story is a little bit like Steve's. Was going along in life, just kind of regular. Was in the aviation business. It was a startup business. Working long and hard, and then one day, I was on an airplane, and I heard a voice kind of outside me, all around me. It said, my name is Tobias. I'm here to work with you. To make a very long story short, Tobias came in for the next year, every night on my way home from work, and took me through kind of a spiritual basic training. Linda and I had no real background in spirituality, New Age, or anything. We were from the Midwest, which says a lot, and then also lukewarm Catholics, which says even more. So this was quite a surprise when this happened. Finally, after about a year, I told Linda about it, and she was wonderfully accepting. And our life really started to turn. We moved from Texas, came up here to Colorado. I was pretty soon out of the aviation business, and really was just going to kind of not do anything. And the Crimson Circle just started to grow. Amazing. I mean, we put up a website, and before we knew it, we were getting phone calls from literally all over the world to come and do a workshop. And it amazed us.
It went viral.
Yeah, and it changed our lives. I channeled Tobias for about 10 years. He was very near and dear, a very good friend. And then he decided to reincarnate back onto the planet and said that he was leaving. At that point, we kind of thought maybe it would be the end of our journey with the Crimson Circle until Adamus came in. And it's Adamus is a facet of Saint Germain, something that he's created to work with us just in the Crimson Circle. Very, very different than Tobias, if you've had a chance to watch him online. He channels, or I channel with my eyes open. He walks around. He's very interactive with the audience. And he's been amazing for me personally, and I hope for those who watch his stuff. But Crimson Circle has come to the point now where he's taking us on a journey into our embodied mastery, our embodied enlightenment. He basically says this is your last lifetime on the planet. You chose it to be a living master, whereas in the past, most of the ascended masters, they left the planet pretty much right at the time of their enlightenment. He said that the group that's with Crimson Circle is here to stay as embodied living masters, to be the standard, the light for others, not to preach it or inflict it on, but just to be there as a light. So it's been an amazing journey for us, for everybody with the Crimson Circle. over the years have worked with Jim and Steve, and always loved the work that we did together, loved the way you guys work and how genuine and sincere you are. So this all kind of came about, I guess, a month or two ago.
Yeah.
A lot of discussions on Facebook, on social media, about what all of the entities were saying. And we finally said, let's get together and let's do an afternoon, talk about what comes up next for the planet. So I get the chills just saying that.
They're here.
Yeah. Good.
Amazing.
Well,
I also wanted to say real quick, too, my partner is not with me today, and I feel very, very empty-handed with that. Barbara travels with me pretty much everywhere we go, and she had to stay home today. So, but she's very much a part of the work, and she's usually on stage with me. So I'll be working kind of with one hand tied behind my back.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara. Right.
Okay, so, and Roxanne, your partner is also, she is in our audience.
Yep.
And then, of course, Jeff and I are kind of a pair or something.
Been together. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much. We're ready for the next question? Okay, so starting with Jim Self, what do your entities have to say about the dynamics on the planet right now that most affect our future?
I can say it to you really simply. How do you choose? Exactly what they're saying. So this whole shifting of consciousness is unfolding, and I can explain it in a number of ways, but basically something that we used to refer to as the veils. The veils are keeping us from this, and et cetera, et cetera. Those veils are thinning, and many of those veils don't even exist anymore. They're not even there. But your habits believe that they're still there, if that makes sense. And so there's a whole set of opportunities to step into, but our habits and our beliefs as what we think is going on generally keeps us going in a particular direction. Now, one of the things that's happening right now to everything, this shift of consciousness starting back in 2012, now really kicking into gear, is basically says a number of things. One of the things it says to an individual, you can't take your baggage with you on this journey. You simply can't take it. You can't take, I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I'm not attractive, I'm never going to succeed. See, those are all gifts somebody gave you in one of their bad days of their lifetime. But what we do is we accept it, and then we ask a very silly question, but we all do this: what's wrong with me? And the reality is you very seldom get a good answer to that question, because nothing is wrong with you. It's somebody else's bad day in your energy field. So, but right now, this shift is very real. It is shifting you into a fifth dimensional state of consciousness, and you can't take your baggage with you. Now, a lot of the baggage that I watch people have is their belief system about how it is supposed to be, or what it should be, or I'm a spiritual person, so I'm going to be just fine. No, you're not. No, you're not. How do you choose this adventure? How do you navigate through this adventure? It requires a conscious intention and a focused attention. And so the Earth, as it's beginning to transition from, I'll say more about this as we go through this, but the Earth is where I go first to ask is the Earth. But where I've spent more time in the last couple of weeks is with the elementals. You see, the elementals have been a long time on the Earth. They've played in this game for a very, very long time. They're ecstatic. They think this is really cool stuff. But to put that into perspective, they're coming from a place of tremendous loss when the fall of consciousness happened, because one of the things that they had to do for you was give up their awareness, their application, their engagement with the vibration of love. Most don't know that part of the story. But in order for you to survive, humanity to survive, their job was to reflect back to you love. And when the fall of consciousness happened, they had to step away from love in their own capacity. It was only a couple years ago that love was given back to them by humanity, because humanity was the source of the removal. So in that context, talking to the elementals about what's coming, they see multiple possibilities. They see numbers of probabilities. But I tell you, they're ecstatic about where this is all going to go. The earth, what humanity does, is up to them how they choose. Let me stop there.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
Thank you. I think really one of the underlying themes that Adamus talks about is freedom on the planet, and really asking whether we as individuals, we as humanity are ready for freedom. He asked this question a number of years ago in one of the sessions, and it drew a lot of kind of sour faces when he said, probably not, probably not. But he said there's enough humans on the planet that are ready for their true freedom. In other words, not living in limitation of the senses or limitation of the mind or of time, but really true freedom to be multidimensional creators like we have always been. So much of what we talk about in the Crimson Circle is about that freedom. Recently, he said that the new Earth and the old Earth being here, new Earth being a potential that we've all been working on. We're all like architects and designers of the new Earth, bringing really the very best of this planet without the baggage that Jim was talking about. And he said that the new Earth and the old Earth aren't going to meld together. At one point, there was the potential, and I think a hope from a lot of us, that these two would come together. He said it's just not going to happen. It's not that it's getting delayed or it's going to be put off for a couple thousand years. He said it's just not going to happen because there's too many people on the planet right now that are in consciousness, that are allowing their freedom and really allowing their divinity and their humanity to coexist. But there are enough people on the planet that still want to be in the game of power, which Adamus says is truly an illusion, that are energy feeders, that want to stay in battle, that want to stay in their old karmic family biology, incarnating one time after the other into their ancestral group. And he said, so it's just not possible right now for the two to come together. And you put that with the fact that artificial intelligence, which can be a wonderful thing, artificial intelligence is here. It's not something in the future. I think you're all reading about it a lot more than ever before, but artificial intelligence, if applied properly for things like medicine and agriculture and a lot of other things, can be an amazing tool to make the human life on the planet easier. And I think we all have come to realize it's kind of tough being a human in a physical body. And one of the beautiful things is that we're starting to allow the divinity to be with us. So it's kind of, we're human and enlightened, or we're human and the master at the same time. Artificial intelligence has a way to make human life a lot easier, less painful in the body, a longer life, a life where we're not just always in that hunger game trying to get energy, whether it's from food or other people, emotional, physical, or any other thing, where we become energy self-sufficient. And artificial intelligence can go a long way in helping us to do that. But just as well, artificial intelligence can eventually change the world in a negative way. It can be used for a new type of warfare on the planet. It can be used to shut down all other types of electronic intelligence. It's been said that the first one to really develop the top end of artificial intelligence can take over all of the other electronic intelligence on the planet. Artificial intelligence is amazing. I'm not a science fiction fan, but I find it amazing, but it's also frightening at the same time. You've probably seen some of the statements come out recently by Elon Musk and by Zuckerberg with Facebook and others really starting to debate this. We're kind of right in the middle of that whole thing, being light workers, spiritual beings on the planet. We're right in the middle of this whole question: will it be used for power and control and energy taking, energy stealing, or will it be used to enhance human life and enhance consciousness? And I think that's the reason we're all here on the planet at this time. I don't think it's any coincidence that we chose to be here as embodied masters in this lifetime to try to bring a balance to it, or at least to illuminate a potential for all the good that technology can bring. But according to Adamus, the jury is kind of still out. We don't know, but the next 20 years in particular are going to be very, very telltale. So that's kind of the essence of what Adamus is talking about, where things are going.
Wow, thank you. Steve?
Well, I went through a little bit of a shock a few months ago because the group's messages have always been so empowering, all about love, all about how we can do it, how we can start to carry our own power rather than give our power away, which we're typically used to. We've done quite a bit of work with stepping into the new dimensions, and I should say that we see dimensional realities in two different ways, so let me explain that. First of all, we're living in a dimensional realm. Dimensional realm we've known to be the third dimension. We all learned what works, what doesn't work. Well, a while back we stepped cleanly into the fifth dimension. It's what we really celebrated with both of these guys to do events around, to step into that, and it culminating at the 12-12-12. And during those times, the challenge we have about those realities, even though we stepped into the fifth dimensional, we still hang on to the third dimensional ways. We still try to do things the same way we did. Even physics is different in the fifth dimension, but we don't necessarily know that because we don't see it yet. We haven't learned how to release those old belief systems. And of course, the other challenge is when we get afraid, and I don't mean just us in particular, but all of humanity, we tend to take steps backwards in our evolution. We go, oh, well, this is not working anymore. I'm going to go back to what used to work. And we do that very automatically, and that's happening a lot right now, moving back and forth, holding on to old third dimensional realities, even though we've stepped cleanly into the fifth dimension. And the part that really kind of threw me for a loop was back at the end of April. We were doing our monthly broadcast, the Virtual Light broadcast, and the group dropped a bomb. And it's very unlike the group to do that. They basically said, your reality that you're living in right now, what you call planet Earth, will be ending in 50 years. And I went into a whole shock over that. I mean, I went into a grieving process that literally, Barb and I had difficulties maintaining our own energy, much less teaching that next week. It was very difficult for us to come back from that. And at the same time that they said that, they keep saying this other thing which almost seems to be completely contradictory. They keep saying, wait until you see what's coming. And kind of giving us hope at the same time. Well, now the dimensional reality we've been talking about the third dimension and the fifth dimension, what happened to the fourth? It's a transitory dimension where we pick up imprints and move, the same as the second dimension. Second dimension is where we learn duality. The fourth dimension is where we're learning to release duality completely. And that's difficult for us because we see everything as contrast, as up, down, good, bad, right, wrong. All the nonsense that worked really well in the third dimension doesn't fit here in the fifth dimension. On top of that, we have another form of dimensionality that I want to talk about. We are multidimensional in nature. We have more than one dimension. There's more than one of me walking around right now. In truth, there are roughly 11 of these dimensions and a 12th dimension, which is the higher self at the center. The illustration they give is very simple. They say a ray of light's coming from home, beautiful white light. It hits this beautiful prism and sends out all these different colors, different flavors of light. Now, the interesting part about that is no problem. We didn't even need to know about that because we don't interact with those other dimensions. But now the dimensional walls are thinning. And we're all starting to see things in new realities. And the other fun thing about this dimensional aspect of things is that when we make a decision, especially an important decision, we make it both ways. We get the best of everything. Because in one dimension, we'll make a decision to go down this path, and in the other dimension, we did something else. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night or maybe in the morning, and you had an incredibly vivid dream where you weren't married to the same person, or you had different children, or some dog that you had that you don't know who the dog it was, or some characters that were there. Those are actually other dimensional realities that you experienced when you let down your consciousness. And usually they're so vivid you can't stop thinking about it all day. You remember those processes. Well, these are starting to happen to us all the time. And one of the challenges about that is that as these dimensional walls start thinning a bit, the first thing to come through them is emotions. So sometimes we'll feel an emotion and it won't be ours. It'll be another dimensional reality right next to ours that some other aspect of us is feeling. So we're learning to live in these other dimensions, but it's not just us. Planet Earth also has these other dimensions. And that's what the group keeps talking about. Wait until you see what's coming. Now, we've all talked about, as we've stepped into this dimension, stepping back into light body. And I say back into light body because the group says we were there in the beginning. We actually helped to form planet Earth. We had these ethereal bodies that did not have density. And we watched this whole thing. That's where we get the whole idea of angels. It's where we get the whole idea of ethereal beings. And we have an ethereal body, which is not our physical body. That's the work that we're doing, and especially in the Light Master course and many of the other courses we're doing. We're actually starting a mystery school that is basically another segment of the higher dimensional work that we're starting to do. And it's loosening the ethereal body so we can get comfortable with working in this body, being able to see our reality in multiple dimensions, and stepping into our power. And we don't need to give the power away. Now, what of the Earth? Well, the group said in about 10 years, everybody's going to agree. It's real simple. The water's going to rise. We're seeing that it's going to start happening at a very quickened pace. But they also said during the next 4 years, in this dimension right here, every little bit that we can do to ease that stress on planet Earth, and it's not all due to us polluting the Earth, that basically sped things up about 1,000 years. So we should have been here about another 1,000 years with this Earth the way it is. But everything that we can do during the next 4 years is going to have a tenfold effect and basically give us more time. We can easily stretch that 50 years into 75, maybe even 100, to allow us to make much more of this transition so we can step into the light body as a collective vibration, learn how to work with this, and learn how to use this reality and create the new world as we speak. Now that is what they're excited about, and that's what they're talking about when they say, wait until you see what's coming. So even though it was a very discouraging message about basically we've drawn a line in the sand now, you're not going back. We're not going to be able to recover Earth the way it is right now. And I felt very much alone at this. I felt like I was the only one that said anything, and then pretty soon I heard from Jim, and he said, we got to talk. And then somebody came up to me at one of the seminars and said, well, Tobias said something like that earlier on. You should contact Jeff. And we find out we're all channeling a very similar message from a different aspect, which is kind of what I think higher
kind of different ways of saying
the same thing.
Yeah, but I think in the end, it's you can't deny that there's just tremendous changes taking place on the planet. And just to throw in a comment about that, I think we've been so used to waiting for it to come, waiting for changes within ourselves or on the planet, and now they're here, and it's a little scary when they say the planet is absolutely going to change in the next 20, 30 years or less, and we're going through that right now.
Mm-hmm. You know, something I'm watching, and it started, and I've heard you talk about this, Steve, too. It started about last summer. In the solstice, June solstice, 3 waves of light started to come in, and 2 of those waves are, I don't want to say destructive, they are disenabling. They're really all about helping you let go of I'm not okay. And also the Earth, all of the places where the Earth holds on to, where the battles are, all the challenge you're seeing right now in terms of politics, geopolitics, world finances, all of these different things. That's all the baggage that's simply coming out, and it has to come out. But these 3 waves, the 3rd wave was really about nurturing that energy out of you, so it's not so harsh in the body particularly. it's created a lot of fear on the planet generally, because you, listening to this conversation, have a sense of yourself spiritually and have a sense of tools and means of moving around. But the average person walking on the street, they don't have this sense of well-being as a possibility. They just feel their status quo being disrupted at a very significant level.
Exactly.
And so a lot of what people are feeling, you all feeling right now, to a great extent is the collective consciousness pushing on the edge of your fields. So when you go into something's wrong, one of the things I tell a lot of people I work with is just, first question you want to ask, is this me or is this that collective consciousness? It gives you a perspective that allows you to discern and make a different choice. But the part that's so fascinating is in this June solstice, right? Solstice, solstice. Those three waves, two of them were starting to splinter, and it was like watching a branch on a fruit tree all of a sudden having little buds on it and then exploding into flowers. The opportunities, and this is what the elementals were talking about, the opportunities that you are going to see are going to absolutely change your perspective dramatically. You think the earth is beautiful now, just wait. And I think that's what you're saying, Steve, with the group. These new opportunities are coming in. The challenge that I watch is we are so ingrained to depend on our habits and our beliefs and, well, this is how it goes on, and our own fears that basically say, oh, wait, I got to step back. This is a place of taking a breath, letting that go, walking to the edge of the cliff and jump because you're going to fly. You're not going to believe it when you jump, but you're going to find that that is really where this has to go. So,
Ted, to what you were saying before, Adamus has said for quite a while that about 92 or 93% of the thoughts that go through your mind are actually not yours.
Not even yours.
They're coming from outside, from mass consciousness, from your ancestral biology and your ancestral psychology. So very, very few it is yours, but yet we're feeling it. As we all get more and more sensitive, we're feeling everything out there, and it's very easy to take the thoughts as your own, what's wrong with me, and that's when you take a deep breath and say, nothing, I'm just feeling all the changes. That there's a tension in society right now, it's building. Yeah. And by the way, I don't think it's any coincidence that we're doing this right before the big eclipse on Monday.
Yeah.
I never thought of it until somebody mentioned it today, and it's like, I wonder if there's a tie-in here.
They said it's been almost 40 years, the last eclipse.
99.
79 I read.
Oh, is it?
No,
a long time ago.
Yeah, really a long time ago.
The good news is there's another one coming in about 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you miss this one,
you miss this one,
get another shot.
We can still get on board.
If you're still on this planet.
Yeah, that's so true.
But it's not about death or the destruction of the planet. We were actually talking about it before we came on the air today when we were sitting in the back room. But we're all starting to exist multidimensionally now, and it's a little weird because we're used to living very linear, very limited. We're starting to feel into the other dimensions that both of you were talking about, the other realities that actually exist. And I think that's what we always wanted, but it's kind of weird when it happens. Jim, you were saying no sense of time anymore, and not just hours in the day, but you're not anchored into time anymore. The rest of the planet, most of the rest of it still is. So there's this very strange dynamic that's taking place, and you really begin to wonder, what am I doing here? What's this all about? What's happening to the planet? And well, that's what we're here talking about today.
Yeah. One of the things that's a big shift, and it's mostly intellectual in the beginning. People are thinking this, so I'm going to say this, and you're going to hear it, and it'll make some sense, but I'm more interested in making sense here than making sense in the rational mind. As you get quieter, as you let go of a lot of this baggage, as you begin to allow the third dimensional space, the Donald Trumps, all the noise, allow them without running the frustrations through your body or the opinions through your body. Not that they're good or bad, they don't vibrate real well when I feel outraged in my own body. But as you begin to start to recognize that one of the things that we do as humans, as we've learned in the third dimension, is we go to everything. We lean into, we think, what should I do next? I wonder how this is going to work. You almost find yourself leaning into your thoughts, leaning into the future. But we go to, I need to find the answer to. One of the things that's going to be more and more happening to you in the next 5, 10 years is, I'll say it this way, the answer lies where the question is asked. You don't have to go anywhere. The answer is right there. The other part of the shift that is a big deal is you're going to find that I see that out there, I can allow that out there, and I can be here, right in this very aligned present time space. What begins to happen here is the thoughts you think come to you. I'd like to go to the movies. You have a passing, and somebody shows up that afternoon and says, hey, I have 2 tickets to the movie. You want to go? All of a sudden, you're going to begin to notice this, and you'll notice it more and more and more. But as you begin to manage that space of allowing and not going to, really tremendous changes are going to begin to happen there. You begin to create your world. You begin to look at those opportunities and those budding waves of light, and you're going to see something absolutely extraordinary that you can choose and then step into. It's really remarkable what's coming.
I'd like to add a little bit to that, too, because of we're actually comparing notes, and we don't usually get a chance to do this. It's awesome. The group talks about a flow of consciousness right above our head. And this is what they're talking about, other people's thoughts, the collective consciousness, everything else. We're only responsible for not what goes through our head. We're going to have good thoughts, we're going to have bad thoughts, we're going to have positive and negative, because it's a part of the flow of consciousness. But we are responsible of what we reach up and grab into it and call our own. And that is becoming more important now. Now, what determines what we grab up there? Because we only have a split second. These things are flying by. We develop what we call belief systems. And the group is saying, you've got a problem with belief systems, period, on planet Earth. And they call belief systems BS, very simply. Well, because what we do is we don't have a belief. We have a whole system of beliefs. And if this is true, this must be true, and this must be true, and I've learned this, and I've learned this process, and all of these things here, and oh, here's one that fits into my belief system, but it doesn't really fit into me. And now we're starting to learn how to discern, how to only take those things that are in really full vibration with us, and that can empower us, can actually make us be the people that we want to be, as well as grow and evolve. So I absolutely agree with you. A different way of putting kind of the same message that you were both talking about. And the other thing that's happening is the physical body's changing. Yeah. It's preparing for this. We're seeing all sorts of changes, different attributes. Long time ago.
Not just getting older.
Well, no, it might be. It might be part of it. But a long time ago, you had a set of ascension symptoms on your website. Yeah. We did too. Yeah. We didn't even know that you had them until we looked at them, and several of them matched up. But now there's a whole different aspect of this taking place with the physical body, because this is a big change. This isn't just stepping into the next level. This is actually loosening the ethereal body, learning to live in it, learning to live in light body, and releasing the density and the old ways. So anyway.
And our bodies, up until now, have been really the byproduct of our ancestors.
Yeah.
Adamus did a whole wonderful thing about letting go of the ancestors. And as wonderful as that might sound, that's very tough to do, because we're linked to it in our DNA. But as we shift into our light body, our master body, we let go of that, and it's tough letting go of the families, because they don't want you to. They want to hold on. You're part of the ancestral cult, and they don't want to let you go. So there's tremendous change there. But one of the other things that was really a shift in the work that we're doing is Adamus talked about how it's time to get over the belief system that you're moving through time and space. Yeah. It's about as old as the Earth is flat. And he said the reality is consciousness is a constant. It doesn't contain any energy. It really doesn't have any movement to consciousness other than passion. But you realize suddenly that time and space are moving through you. You're the constant, or consciousness is. It was a tremendous shift in beliefs or allowing. But what came with it was the realization that, hang on a second, time and space are moving through me, not necessarily linear, but it's moving through me. And like Steve was saying, you just pick what experiences you want, but you also realize everything comes to you. And the human has a really hard time with that because the human's been fighting for everything. But the master that we are also just realizes it's all there. Maybe not what the human thought should be there. Maybe it's not like you suddenly lose 20 pounds or get 10 years younger or win the lotto, but it just suddenly what you really need as the human and the master is there. It's a whole different way of living, a whole different shift. It's amazing.
You know, that just kind of add to all that. So one of the things, if you ask yourself, where did your belief systems come from? We were talking about they're not yours, and we've said that also. But it's the mom, dad, teacher, minister who said right, wrong, good, bad, should, shouldn't, talk to them, don't go there, etc. And we, in our innocence, basically say, okay. And then we build on that whole process. And once you can really begin to just consider that as a possibility, is that possible? Is that really, where did I get my beliefs? And you can start to stay in present time, in that quiet space. You're going to find that by just not arguing for them unconsciously, which is what we do, that magnetic, well, this is what I am. I'm Catholic, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm black, or I'm green, or all of that is really not even really there to a great extent. Once you begin to let go, what gets fascinating, then understanding time, space passes through you. Where these veils are thinning out, I've watched it in a couple of places, particularly in the sleep space of late, you're going to start to find that you recognize I'm in a dream. And then you're going to start to realize I'm in a dream that I can alter. And then you're going to realize I can alter the dream and I can place it 2 weeks out in front of me and then walk into it 2 weeks later and have the outcome that I created. Now, that gets really fascinating. The other side I'm watching is animals. Anybody noticing that the animals talk to you a little bit more, or your engagement with them, or they don't run away, or they come up and sit at your foot and you're going, what the heck? And they stay there. You're going to, these are the veils that I think are starting to loosen up, that begin to be available to you, choosing differently than you currently choose.
We've talked about 4 different waves coming in this year.
Yeah.
Basically, that were coming in this year to change. We're in the midst of the deep wave right now. It doesn't end until like the 28th of August, started on the 28th of July, and basically running roughly a month, peaking on Monday when we have this unique experience of having a solar eclipse. And the energy is very magical here. We can create stuff out of this because it's a collective experience. Everybody gets to experience this in some way. So we have a choice of being able to pull these in and make these very magical, life-changing experiences here for all of us. The final wave, the group didn't even talk about for a long time. They wouldn't even give me a date because they said it's really going to be how you deal with the other 3 waves is going to have a lot to do with it. And then finally they said it's going to be on October 22nd. We're actually going to be in Sedona, Arizona, doing a seminar on October 22nd, and working with different aspects of the earth and some of the beautiful portals and things that are taking place there. But in these waves, we're not coming out the other side as the same. It's real simple. So we're in the midst of all this change. It is absolutely taking place right now, and we're moving through it. And a lot of it has to do with what you're talking about where did we get this stuff? Where do we get these ideas and so forth, and these teachings about what is right and wrong and our belief systems and so forth? We have choice. And the other beautiful thing that you talked about with the ancestry of this and coming from the ancestors, when we do release it, we heal backwards and forward in a timeline.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We not only heal our children, but we heal our parents and our grandparents. And that's a part of that's the part of the time frame that they're talking about. And I love your explanation of time coming to us, because it basically does. Jim and I have talked about the torus and how that's around every energy form. That's actually creating our illusion of time around us. But it's a circle, and it comes through in different ways, and we can choose how we experience that and how we relate to it.
Thank
I know
you.
Linda wants to get to the next question, but one real quick addition to what Steve said was
No, you turned
Not-
us loose. You shouldn't have done that.
not
Well,
only
you know, I was watching
Steve
it.
is right. We heal backwards and forwards. I think Tobias said at one point, the future is the past healed. And what happens in our enlightenment in this lifetime in our body, it's not just about us individually, it's also occurring at the same time with all the past lives of ours, yours, and all the future lives. So we're like we're the designated ascendee, the embodied ascendee, and it's like going out in waves to our past and our future. So through us, they're all going through their enlightenment. And the past truly changes. It's mind-boggling. Back to you, ma'am.
So the question is, we're kind of working through this. You've kind of jumped around, but it's been very interesting. But I guess probably one of the most important questions I think we all have is, what can we do? What can our viewers do to prepare for and handle the changes that are about to come? Oh, and I'll start with Steve.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, part of the thing that we want to do is to take charge of our lives, very simply. We're here in all dimensions, in all aspects of it, and we can choose to be here. And the other aspect about this whole process of this form of Earth is leaving, there's going to be many that stay behind. Number one, we can't judge that. There will be many that stay behind intentionally. And we can't judge something as good or bad because we pull ourselves back into third dimensional thinking the moment we do that. So we have to honor everybody's space where they are, what their belief systems are, and where they're going, what they want to do with that. But what can we do? We can start broadening our horizons. We can start trying new thoughts on. We can start basically changing and stepping into the higher aspect of what makes us the highest that we can be. What makes us happy? We deserve to be happy. Plain and simple. When we're happy, when we're in our highest, when we're empowered, we become the highest use to the universe that we can be. So whether that's a course, whether that's talking to other people, whatever it happens, and you will be presented with those opportunities. I took an Uber here from the airport, 30-minute, 40-minute drive. This gentleman asked me, he said, "Do you mind me asking what you're doing?" Well, there's that moment of semi-panic that I always go through. Do I tell them or not? And finally I said, yeah, heck with it. I'm a channel. I talk to entities from the other side of the veil. I'm getting together with other channels, and we're going to talk about the future of planet Earth. And
Hi, that's all. That's all. No
nothing
big
problem.
deal.
We do that today. We'll do something else tomorrow. You know, that
Thanks
kind
for
of thing.
sharing.
Yeah. And I expected him to get fully quiet at that point and be a very long ride. It wasn't. He turned out to be a very empowered being who was releasing a bunch of his old thoughts that he was empowered with. And the willingness to do that is very difficult for us because we've grown up with all this stuff, and it's very challenging sometimes to do that. That's what we can do. And the other part is not be afraid to speak our truth, which is very difficult for all of us, me too. There have been times where I've said that to somebody on an airplane and had like a 12-hour airplane ride very quietly with the person next to me. But it's time. It's time to start owning who we are, what we believe, not that we're the only belief, not that we're the only right one, but this is who we are. And that's the greatest thing that we can do here at this point.
Yeah, and speaking your truth is not giving your opinion.
Right.
Two really very different things. Again, that word discerning comes into play. And then sometimes even speaking your truth, is it have value to lay before somebody else's feet? Can they hear it? And if they can't hear it, simply don't cast your pearls before swine, as it said in some book somewhere. I read that somewhere. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So there's an interesting thing that I watch over the years between the work that Steve does and work Jeff does and work I do. They're really overlapping circles in so many ways. And they're just different attention points, different kind of parts of the path that each of us are walking, most of which is being, we think in terms of teaching the pieces, it's between me and you, the person, the student, the teacher type thing. But not really. It's a lot of this work is being laid into the etheric planes for people to choose. They just accidentally all of a sudden start putting down their guns because today was the day to do it type of thing. That's the work you're doing. Whether you realize it or not, it's all of this. One of the things that I found how to help it's one of the prominent pieces of the Mastering Alchemy work, is words. Now, words are sound tones to start with, and everything. The chair you're sitting in is made of sound. That's a whole nother story. But effectively, when a person can begin to discern and choose consciously, and I say to you, okay, well, what would you like to choose? Usually I get I don't know, I want to be happy. Okay, there's a good start. But would you like to be certain and capable and gracious and have your own seniority about yourself? I exist. This is who I am. See, those are feelings and alignments in the body. Those are not intellectual concepts that we just speak. Have you ever been certain? Oh, yeah, I've been certain. It's very different than, yes, I know what certainty is. And when you begin to weave those sound tones and those words together, there is a vibrational field in the body that, one, draws you into present time, two, allows you both to discern and choose, and then engage in which you want to engage with as an action. But when we stay in linear time and worry about the past and what is my mother going to say, and there's no certainty, there's no structure to that third dimensional form, and we're scattered based on what's the next thing that pops up in our face. So kind of answering the question is who are you? Not in some big spiritual question, but who am I right now? How do I demonstrate myself? How do I present myself? How would I like to experience myself in crafting these tremendous opportunities that are being presented to me?
Okay.
Good. I was so enamored by what both of you said, I forgot the question.
So what can we do? What can the viewer do to prepare and to handle for the changes you're talking about?
Gotcha. I think a couple things. To realize that we are going into the and, what Adamus calls the and, no longer the local linear human going on this very linear path. And suddenly you realize you're the human and you're the master, you're the student and you're the enlightened being. You're all of these things, and I think that's so important because it has a big impact on that human aspect who's thought it's had to do the enlightenment and it's had to follow the rules and it's had to work hard on itself and perfect itself. Once you get into the consciousness of you realize that the human doesn't have to do that. The human should not and is not responsible for enlightenment. It wouldn't know how to do it. It would mess it up. It would turn it into a lot of rules and regulations and then use it against other people. So just take a deep breath and realize that the human part of you doesn't have to do that. The master, that aspect of you, is actually already enlightened. It lives beyond time and space. The enlightenment has always been there, and it's now the human simply allowing that. Well, that takes a tremendous pressure off of you, off of all of us, to realize you don't have to do the enlightenment. All you need to do is enjoy life and realize that life is absolutely sensual. Actually, Adamus describes the other dimensions as the other senses, and not our human senses, but senses such as beauty and focus and I forgot what all the other ones were, but he says your senses are the other dimensions. The other dimensions are your senses. Senses are ways of perceiving reality. So he's saying to the human, have fun and enjoy life. My gosh, we've all been working so hard on it, wearing ourselves out, worrying ourselves out. He says, go ahead and just enjoy life right now. And the other part of that ties into it is allowing. We're not going to change the world through what I would call our human efforts. We're going to change the world through allowing our divinity into this reality. We've kept it out there, but by allowing it in here, that's going to change the world. It changes it because suddenly our light, our consciousness, our vibration is very, very different. We're no longer the struggling, energy-hungry human. We're suddenly self-contained energy-wise. There's no struggle anymore. It just comes to us. That actually illuminates the potentials that you were talking about, both of you. It it like casts this light on all the other potentials for the people who are ready to choose those. But Adamus is very clear about saying, don't try to save the world, no matter how it's changing, maybe slipping away. Don't try to change the world, because it's not going to work very well. Have compassion for the world. Allow yourself, allow the divinity, allow the and. And a good way of kind of looking at it is shortly about the time Tobias left in 2009, there was about a little over 1,500 ascended masters who came back to Earth, who took on the physical body of masters like Tobias. They didn't have to. There was no karma in it. They came for one simple reason, is to enjoy the beauty of the planet. Things that they didn't do in their lifetimes, their last lifetime, because they're so often the masters would suffer and they get all into their head games and they would get all into their emotions and everything else. So they're coming back, or they've come back, and not to save the planet. You may never even read about them. They came back to do the things that, well, that we can do right now. Enjoy nature, enjoy food, enjoy living, enjoy other people, just to enjoy life. This is our last lifetime on the planet. Let's absolutely enjoy it and not be afraid of ourselves anymore, of overindulging or getting addicted. Or we have all these fears, these beliefs, and they're like these walls, and we believe that, oh, if I eat too much, I'm going to gain weight or I'm going to become an addict. You're not. Take a deep breath and just enjoy it. That's the best thing you can do for the planet, for yourself.
You know, let me add one piece to that. So how do you do that? So how do you do that? And the answer is actually pretty easy, but it's one of the hardest answers to accept, and that's, I'm going to love myself. I'm going to like myself. I'm going to enjoy myself. I watch so many people who are so wonderfully adamant about saving the earth and saving humanity and making things better. And, well, how are you doing? Oh, I'm not doing too good. Well, that's okay, but you're going to save somebody. Yeah, I'm going to save somebody. Save yourself.
Absolutely.
And the odd part about that, and I'll say it even a different way, learn how to become selfish.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as I say that, people go, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
You know, you mean the part where I step on somebody, I use somebody, I take advantage of somebody, I kick them out the door when I don't need them anymore? No, not that end of the stick. The end that says, I can have for myself. Because once you begin to have, you start to find that it really builds up and you don't even need all the stuff you're having. I mean, then you can begin to give it away and really give it away. It's like, I don't want this $10,000 anymore. Oh, sorry, I gave that away yesterday. But come back next week. It really is. It's about you getting really clear. I can see all the trauma, the turmoils, the challenges, and I get that if I can like myself, be myself, give to myself, the capacity I have to influence that world is exceedingly much more to your benefit and opportunity than simply going at the world from survival, lack, and less. It's really, really important to like yourself at a minimum.
Just to validate that very quickly, what the group talks about there is, over here, to be selfish is to put yourself first to cut other people off. But to be self-first is your proper place in the universe, very simply.
And Adamus talks about being self-full. You know, same difference, be full of yourself.
I love it.
You know, to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's so important, and we've been trained by mass consciousness, religions, and everything else to take care of others first. And you know, when you're falling apart, you're not able to take care of others, and it's also kind of lacking in compassion to think you have to change the world. According to Adamus, the real definition of compassion is allowing all things to be. No matter what, you see somebody going through hardships in their life, you see somebody choosing certain paths that you may not choose. Real compassion is allowing them to do that. Now, if they come to you at some point and they say, I don't know how to handle things anymore, what can you tell me? That's the time to kick in. But this going out and saving the world thing, I I don't think it's going to work so well, and it backfires on you too.
Wait, can they hear you if they don't have that consciousness?
We're getting to the point. I think we haven't talked about this, but both of you realize that they don't even see you anymore. For any of you, they don't hear you, they don't see you if they're not in that same consciousness, and it's not good or bad. They just don't.
It's just a different level.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you make that. Let's make that really clear, because when we talk about things like two Earths, or we talk about the whole, think about it not so much in this part of the conversation, not so much as another planet, but as a strata of consciousness where you exist, well-being, happy, joyful, certain, capable, and the other part of the world that's still choosing misery, they're going to stay there, and they're going to stay there. But it's two different stratas of consciousness that are going to have, they're going to begin to, I don't want to use the word separate, but they're going to begin to move apart from one another. And in that new strata, the opportunities of the earth are just astonishing.
Mm-hmm. So how far do you think they're going to move apart?
About a mile.
About a mile. Yeah, yeah.
And it'll happen next Thursday.
Well, I'm beginning to Monday.
Oh, no,
Monday.
no,
Yeah,
no.
Monday. I'm just, I'm been
begins on
sensing
Monday.
more and more separation in the planet, and even in things like, there was so much progress in terms of race relations, and now that seems to be separating, a more separation between the haves and the have-not, between masculine and feminine, at a time where I thought it would be kind of coming together. It suddenly seems more polarized than ever.
Everything's got to come to the surface.
Exactly.
It's all happening that way.
And even our relationship with other people and with the planet, it just seems to be so different. I don't know if I should admit this on the air, but I'm just getting less and less tolerant. More and more just enjoying being with the Shaumbra light workers, being with Linda, but just less and less tolerant. I just can't handle sometimes being out in public.
And you don't have to.
Thank you.
Don't go-
Oh, good,
don't-
thank
don't-
you.
That's the name.
Roxanne and I don't have any friends. We just live in our house. Work in our house, live in our house,
We
look
talked
out the
about
window.
that. We talked about that.
It is a challenge.
Somewhat the same.
Yeah.
Linda and I have imaginary friends.
There
much-
you go.
Much
Now we got it.
easier.
Yeah. So, interesting.
So, with that, I think it's time for our break. I want to thank Steve and Jim and Jeffrey. I think they had some wonderful things to offer, and I am sure that we'll have some good questions when we come back in 30 minutes. So we're going to take a break. We all deserve one. Take care of you. Take care of your body. Take some good deep breaths, and we'll be back here, right back here in 30 minutes. So thank you, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Could you put 30 minutes on the thing? That's about be 10 after.